My wonderful listeners. Welcome back, language lovers, curious minds, and fellow educators. You're tuning into another episode of the Languages Pedagogy podcast, the place where language meets life, pedagogy meets passion, and words take on a whole new world of meaning. I'm your host, and today we're diving headfirst into one of the most hotly debated yet misunderstood topics in the world of language acquisition: input flooding. More specifically, can you really learn by listening alone? No flashcards, no speaking drills, no grammar books, just flooding your brain with a tidal wave of input. Sounds almost too good to be true, right? Let's find out. So, get yourself comfortable, grab a coffee or tea or any beverage that you would like to drink, and let's get started.
Woo! Let's go!
Imagine this. You're sitting on a crowded train in Tokyo. You don't speak Japanese, but every day you ride that train. You hear announcements, snippets of conversations, advertisement playing in the background. It's like you're submerged in an endless ocean of Japanese, right? You're not trying to understand, you're just hearing. Fast forward 3 months, 6 months, a year. You begin recognizing the announcement that says Tsugi wa Shibuya desu. I don't know if I said it correct. You're pretty sure Tsugi means next. You've heard it 1,000 times, and just like that, a spark goes off. You're absorbing the rhythm, the tone, even a few words, without ever opening a textbook. That, my great listeners, is the basic promise of input floating. So, let's start with a question. What is input flooding exactly? Let's see the groundwork. Input flooding is a technique derived from the broader input hypothesis, a theory pioneered by renowned linguist Stephen Krashen. According to Krashen, comprehensible input language that is just slightly above the learner's current level is the key to acquisition. And in input floating, you supersize that concept. You don't just expose yourself to the language, you bathe in it. You flood your ears, your brain, your environment with as much of the target language as humanly possible. You might binge watch shows in Spanish without subtitles, listen to podcasts in Korean all day long, play French YouTube videos on loop as you do your chores. Your job isn't to understand everything, just to listen. Constantly, passively, repeatedly. Now, here's the question. Does it work? Let's unpack the science, the stories, the studies, and the surprising truth about input flooding. The brain, a language absorbing machine? Well, there's a reason we call the early years of a child's life a critical period. Kids can pick up language seemingly without effort. Why is that? Because they're immersed in rich input all day long. Conversations, songs, questions, affirmation, corrections. They don't need explanations about verb conjugation or noun declensions. They hear, they absorb, they internalize. And this forms the roots of the argument in favor of input flooding. Proponent says that adults can learn just like children. If we recreate that same environment, of course. But here's the catch. Adults aren't blank slates. Our brains work differently. We analyze, we question, we compare, and crucially, we often translate from the new language back into our mother tongue. This creates an interesting tension. Can we truly absorb language as adults the way children do, just by listening? Or do we need more? What the research says. So let's take a look at the research. In multiple studies, input flooding has shown positive effects, but almost always in controlled ways. For example, in one experiment by Ellis and he, learners were exposed to repetitive audio input that flooded them with one target grammar structure, like the use of will for future tense. After repeated exposure, participants did indeed start to recognize the form and use it more accurately. Sounds promising, right? And yes, but this was focused input flooding. The repetition wasn't random. It was engineered around a grammatical goal. When the input is unfocused, like listening to random movies or audio clips with no scaffolding, results become murkier. Comprehension and vocabulary recognition tend to rise slowly over time, but productive skills, like speaking and writing, lag far behind. So, yes, listening alone can work, but it works best when the input is comprehensible, repetitive, and connected to a purpose. So, comprehensible input versus input flooding. We need to pause here and draw a key distinction. Not all input is created equal. There is comprehensible input, language that's just a little bit above your current level, filled with contextual clues, visual support, and repetition. Then there's a raw input flooding, just throwing thousands of hours of target language audio at your brain, whether you understand it or not. The most effective learning happens somewhere between the two. Now, let's think about this like music, alright? If you play Mozart for a baby every day, will they become a composer? Probably not. But if you teach them music while playing Mozart, they'll build skills much faster. The same goes for language. Input must be digestible, pattern rich, and meaningful. Here we go with the real life success stories and cautionary tales. You've probably heard of people who moved to a new country, didn't take classes, and somehow became fluent just by living there, right? Input flooding success stories. Here we go. But here's the nuance most people miss. Those people weren't just listening. They were also interacting, observing, struggling, guessing meaning, being corrected, trying again. The input was embedded in real life. On the flip side, I've met a language learner, or language learners, to be honest, who spend years listening to anime in Japanese, hours every day, and still couldn't order sushi confidently at a restaurant. But why is that? Because passive listening alone isn't enough. Input without interaction is like watching someone cook for 5 years and expecting to become a chef without ever touching a knife. How to make input flooding work for you? Let's shift gears now. If input flooding has potential, and it does, how do we make it work? Here are a few powerful principles. 1. Start with comprehensible input. Watch content that you can roughly understand. Use subtitles in your target language. Choose videos, songs, or podcasts that are slightly above your level, not way beyond. 2. Repetition is your friend. Don't chase novelty. Rewatch, re-listen, relive the same content again and again. Your brain loves patterns. Repetition helps you catch nuances that maybe you missed the first time. 3. Use audio with transcript. Listen to a podcast in Portuguese while reading along with the transcript. This dual input method accelerates recognition and builds vocabulary depth. 4. Shadowing. Repeat after native speakers. Even if you don't understand everything, mimicking the rhythm and tone builds muscle memory and ear training. 5. Make it emotional. Find content you care about. Emotional engagement increases retention. If you love cooking, listen to recipe videos in Italian. If you're into gaming, follow streamers who speak Russian, if that is your target language. Input flooding and the 4 language skills. Here's where things get interesting. Language isn't just one thing. It's 4 skills. Listening, speaking, reading, writing. Of course. Input flooding mostly strengthens listening and indirectly reading. You start to recognize words and patterns, but without output, speaking and writing can remain frozen. Some learners experience what's known as the silent period that we already talked in the previous episode. They understand a tone but feel blocked when trying to speak. Let's be clear, this is normal, but eventually you need to push past it. So, no, input floating won't magically turn you into a fluent speaker overnight, but it builds a strong foundation for when you're ready to speak. And of course, let's be real. You can't just listen and expect fluency, but you also don't need to memorize every grammar rule before starting. The ideal path? A balanced diet, right? Input flooding for exposure, structure lessons for clarity, speaking practice for fluency, writing for reinforcement. It's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just run every day without stretching, strength training, or rest. Same with language. You need the full ecosystem. So, can you learn just by listening? The final answer, yes, but not completely. You can learn a lot by listening. Vocabulary, pronunciation, rhythm, grammar patterns, cultural context, emotional nuance. But you won't get everything. Listening alone builds the bridge. But speaking, interacting, and reflecting are what allow you to cross it. Input flooding is a powerful ally. When used wisely, of course. It's a tool, not a magic trick. It accelerates acquisition, but only if you're awake while doing it. Passive input can be helpful, but active listening, noticing, guessing meaning, mentally repeating, is where the real magic happens. So if you're out there wondering, should I listen more? The answer is a loud and resounding yes. Listen while you commute. Listen while you cook. Listen while you walk your dog. But don't stop there. Repeat what you hear. Ask yourself what it means. Connect it to real life moments. Make the language yours. Flood your ears. Yes, but also flood your curiosity. Flood your patience, your willingness to sound silly as you try new sounds. Because in the end, input alone won't carry you to fluency, but it will carry you far enough to meet the rest of the journey halfway. And trust me, that journey is worth every second. And well, that's all for today's deep dive into input floating. I hope this episode helped you see listening in a new light, less like a background noise and more like a superpower waiting to be unlocked. Whether you're listening to this episode while walking, working, or winding down, remember this: every minute you spend with the language matters. So keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. Until next time, keep floating your world with language and keep learning out loud.